Welcome back to Kings of the North. Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis. We're talking NFL draft today because the NFL draft is, I don't even know when it is. It's like 3 weeks or so. No, it's tomorrow. It's Thursday. Is that right? Thursday night.
Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Yeah.
Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And so we are, I don't know, this is, I don't know if you're watching on YouTube, there's Mickey Mouse on my glass today. People may have noticed that I drink a lot during shows. I am constantly consuming liquid. It's just part of my personality. This may look like diet soda, Bill, but actually this is a glass full of SEC tears because they are, and it's going to refill itself during the course of this show, because we are busting draft myths so hard on this show that they are going to question their very existence. Because the thing that I love about this show, Bill, is that whenever you talk to anybody from the South or anybody who's an SEC honk about, oh, why you think your conference, your area, your region is better than the North, better than the Big Ten, better than the top half of the Big 12, when they can't talk about wins on the field, which they haven't been able to do the last 2 years, this is where they go. Haven't you had those conversations? They go straight to the NFL draft. Oh, well, I guess I'll let NFL GMs tell me where the best football is played. It's their crutch.
Wasn't it that exactly the conversation you had with Andy Staples when he was so gracious to allow you on his show last year?
Why you got to throw names into it? I was just going to leave it vague. Those people. Yeah, it's what Andy Staples said. So here's what we're doing. So now the SEC, which hasn't won a national championship the last 2 years, they're crutching down the sidewalk, right? And on there, I'm making a meme. Can we make it? Do we have a meme maker? Can we do this? They're making a meme. And each crutch says like NFL draft on it. And I'm running up and I am kicking the crutches out from under them on this show, because it's not that the tide is turning or about to turn, Bill. It's that the tide has already turned. And the 2-decade run of absolute Southern dominance in the NFL draft is already over. And what will happen on Thursday and Friday is only a continuation of the already present reality that nobody in the South either wants to acknowledge or is even aware of. I think we might be the only people in the country, Bill, who actually know that this has already happened.
We're certainly the only ones talking about it. I think we're the only ones that will present the data that we have in this show to underscore it. People will come around, like it happened slowly but surely. They're coming around to our agenda. It's not gonna happen overnight, but they're getting there. At a certain point, you'll just have to. You won't have a choice. But they're still clinging to the past a little bit.
The problem is that when I loose the sword, I want quick action. A sword is not a slow-moving impetus. This is you're alive, and then I get out my sword and then you're not alive anymore. So when people come around slowly in sword country, that's a little difficult for me. We're going to do that. We're going to talk to Bradley Locker, who wrote a very interesting story for PFF.com in the past couple of days about schools sending guys to the NFL in the last 3 years, and then who actually produces in the NFL. And guess what? He happened to find some very interesting things that perhaps reaffirm development and production in the North. And what's the phrase that I would use? Puffed up Southern fraudness. Is that, I mean, that's coming. He did it. And then watch it. What you watching, what you eating, what you're thinking at the end. Let's start with our data. The NFL draft is coming. Are you going to be locked in Thursday night? Just like, because here's the other thing. I would encourage anybody who enjoys, you're also just allowed to live your life. You don't have to be like this. For real. You do not. This is not a requirement. A lot of this is, I'm like this, so you don't have to be like this. This is not a be like Doug this is situation. This is maybe it's good there's one person like this in the world, but we do not need more. So I'm out here. I got the swords, but I'm not going to be locked in on Thursday night. Are you going to be locked in on Thursday night watching the draft?
Yeah, I'll be locked in. I usually am for the first round, and then less so. Certainly not on Saturday. A little bit less so for the Friday night. But I will be. My wife and I have already made arrangements. She's doing bedtime. I'm locking in on the draft on Thursday night.
Oh, lovely. So I'll be in for the back half of it. My daughter is in her final high school play. It's a musical, and it starts on Thursday night. So I will be there Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. She's Mrs. Gloop. So I can't. Come on.
Oh, it's not a musical version of Draft Day to get into the spirit of the season.
No one went to his birthday party. No one went to his birthday party. I mean, if you're asking, should you and I write a musical version of Draft Day between now and next year? The answer is definitely yes. But she's going to be glooping it up. So a choice between Mrs. Gloop and Abdul Carter. I mean, come on. When your kid's Mrs. Gloop, what are you going to do? So I will be coming in late. So I won't be like tweeting it live, but I will be watching it like this. And will you be watching it like this? Like this. Yellow legal pad, NSB, north-south border, tracking how many picks from each region in both the first round and second round. I find that interesting to do. Maybe not everybody does.
I probably will be now. Yeah, I can't say that I've experienced a draft that way in years past. I covered the draft one year.
In
when
Philly?
When it was in Philly, yeah. I was still at Cleveland.com when I went because I guess that was the year. That was the year that the Browns drafted Myles Garrett, but I guess there was a chance they might draft Mitch Trubisky, who was a local guy, and he was there. So like they wanted me there in case they ended up drafting Trubisky, but they didn't. Yeah, it actually kind of stunk as like an live event. I'm surprised the NFL gets so much out of it. Maybe it's better if you're just going for a fan and hanging out, but I thought like covering it as a member of the media, it was not great for that Thursday night first round.
Yeah, I agree with that. I covered the Chicago one in 2016 when Ohio State had 1 million guys drafted 2 years after the national championship. So yeah, I think it is a wonderful TV event, and I think it could be fun to go and scream when your team is on the clock. As a fan, as a media member, it loses a little luster. Let's get to the numbers. Here's what's already turned. I looked at average number of first round picks and average number of first and second round picks. And there was a time, this is a thing that we admit on this show, Bill. We don't ignore the truth. And we just ask that anybody in the South follow those same rules. Don't ignore the truth. So guess what? The South and the SEC, once upon a time, dominated the NFL draft. And in the 25 years between 1997 and 2021, average number of first-round picks, South 18 by our definitions, North 10.3, and border, which is Louisville, Virginia Tech, and the California schools, so this is a lot of USC, was 3.4. But in the last three drafts, 2022, 2023, and 2024, first-round picks, South 16.7, North 13.7, border 1.3. So here's the point, Bill. For 25 years, the South was averaging about 8 more first-round picks than the North every year. And in the last 3 years, the average is 3 more than the North. And that is a sea change. And I will even tell you, last year did not go that great. It was 19 South, 11 North, and 2 border. But in 2023, it was 15-15. And 1 border, and then 1 pick that didn't happen because somebody got penalized. And in 2022, it was 16-15 South. So 2 years ago, it was tied. And this idea, so first round picks, when you sit down and watch the draft, there are so many years, Bill, looking back. 2013, the South had 21, the North had 10. 2010, the South had 21, the North had 8. 2005, the North had 20. So the South had 20, the North had 8. 2002, the South had 20, the North had 9. 2001, the South had 19, the North had 9. Like, this was just the norm. About 18, 19, 20 to 10 was the expectation, Bill. And that's what people who cite that are grabbing onto. But what they don't know, I swear they don't know it, is that 2 of the last 3 years, it's been basically even. The South won last year, but not as much as they had in the past. And that is what is going to continue. It's going to be around the same this year. The South will win, but it's going to be close. And I swear that is not the conversation. That is not how people look at the draft. I think people still think the South dominates the NFL draft. And here's the real deal. It's the real deal. Those people are wrong.
They are. They're not bothering to do the research, though, right? It's just easy to make that assumption, I think. Because honestly, I would have made the same assumption. If I weren't part of this show and had been brainwashed by you to think about the draft differently, I would have made the same assumption. And it's not like, listen, if there's ever the year where the North does have more picks than the South, like Doug will be at the draft with flaming swords, and you'll know that it's happening. It's about the fact that it's close. It's about the fact that it's close. That it's not lopsided. Because even hearing those numbers, right? Like the fact that there were years where the North was failing to reach double digits is like, what the heck was happening? Like, I get that the SEC was good. But even then, that should not be happening. So it's changed. It's changing. I don't know that it'll ever evolve to the point where the North has more regularly than the South, but the fact that it's even based on your research is a rather monumental shift in how things have gone the last 25 years.
Okay. First and second round. No, I didn't go 25 years back. That's a lot of people to count.
Yeah.
10 years back. Previous 10 years, 2012 to 2021 versus the last 3 years. So 64 picks in the first round. If you're going through here and saying, hey, not all the numbers add up, blame the Patriots and the Dolphins and everybody else who gets penalized by the NFL and gets a first or second round pick taken away, because not every year doesn't add up to 32 and 64. Okay. Previous 10 years, 2012 to 2021. South, on average, first and second round picks. 34.6 players for the South, 22.8 for the North, 6.2 for the border. So that's about a 12-player advantage for the South. The last 3 years, South, 31.7, North, 30, border, 2.3. So it went from almost a 12-player advantage, Bill, for a decade to a 2-player advantage the last 2 years. And by the way, I wasn't quite like doing my thing here like we are now. Last year, the South did win. In 2023, the North won this. 32 North, 28 South, 3 border on first and second round picks. So the North has not had more first round picks than the South since 1996. 1996, it was 13 North, 12 South, 5 border. Okay. Again, I will be there with my flaming swords when it happens. But just 2 drafts ago, they did have more first and second round picks. So, Bill, what do you think of that change? 10-year average, the South has 12 more in the first 2 rounds. Last 3 years, the South has 2 more in the first 2 rounds.
The North cleans up in the second round, I guess. I don't know. That's
Oh.
yeah. The North owns. I'll wear that shirt. The North owns a second round. Yeah. Nothing. There people are drafting starters in the second round, man. It's okay. I think that just feels like maybe that it's not going to flip back in the North's favor in the first round like overnight, but maybe the fact that it seems to be equalizing within the second round, or if not the North having actually a little bit of an advantage in the second round at this point, is sort of the precursor to the first round becoming much more of an even sort of level battleground than it has been the last couple of years. Yeah, so I guess, I don't know, the NFL is coming around to the idea that you can draft starters from Northern programs too, which is great because you can.
Yeah. So I just wanted to put the numbers out there. I hope we're changing lives. I hope we're changing perceptions. I hope we're honking off the honks who think that the talent starts and ends in the South, because you are just lying to yourself if you think that. We have a couple projections here. We're going to dive now into like what we think is going to happen. I don't know that it's going to, I don't think it's a flaming swords year. Mock draft database predictions, right? Like just like mock draft database. If you guys have never been there, it's just a good website that gathers up like every possible mock draft in the world, whether you are crunching hours of tape year round or whether you're just an aggregator whose boss makes you look at everybody else's draft and throw a draft together. They put it all into one big pile. And the mock draft database consensus for this year is 18 South and 14 North in the first round. And the mock draft database consensus for the first 2 rounds is 34 South, 29 North, 1 border. So it's like, it's not going to happen, right? I would track this. I am going to track it whenever I am watching the draft. If you want to do this, get out your yellow legal pad and track this. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think it's close enough that it could be exciting, Bill. So that's the part of this. And I think, are we going to have a parade? It's been since 1996. The first time the North wins the first round since 1996, I will get out my trumpet and march down my street. I might get cited by the local cops. But I will film that. I will make my wife or my daughter film me having the North won the first round at the NFL draft parade. It will be a parade of one.
The one-man parade? Yeah.
And I'll see if I can carry my swords during the parade. I don't think that's going to happen this year, but it's close enough, Bill, that this is the point. This is the new norm. So this is what it's been the last 3 years. It's what it's going to be again. It's not going to be 20-10. It's going to be 18-14, 17-15, maybe 16-16 in the first round. And it's going to be pretty close in the first 2 rounds too.
Yeah, it is. And so what song do you think you'll play on your trumpet for your one-man parade? Just, do you have one in mind? Have you mapped out the route as well? I feel like you've mapped out the route that you're going to take.
I am constantly mapping out parade routes, like the parade routes in my head, that if someday they turn my home into a museum to honor my contributions to the world, and when they open the house as a museum, they have a parade for the opening of that, like where it would go. So many. You and I discovered on a road trip that we share a favorite song, which is Just Like Heaven, that's what it would feel like if the North won the NFL draft. So I don't know if you can play a Cure song on a trumpet in a one-man parade, but I'll try.
I would love it. I would love it. How much of this too, by the way, like, you know, we're very much in favor of pointing out the South fading in any capacity, but can we take a moment to just thank Bambi for his contributions to the Northern upswing and draft picks, and the fact that the border doesn't matter at all in this conversation?
I'm not sure this would be great California college football content, but death of the border, and it is just the North scooping up all that waning California juice. Stanford used to put people in the draft. Nothing. USC has fallen off a cliff, and it's weird. Like, we include Louisville and Virginia Tech as border schools here. There are times where you'll go through a draft, and it's like, wow, like Louisville had 5 people in the first 2 rounds of the draft. And so like, they don't have Lamar Jackson there anymore. So that's not happening either. So like, it's, death of the border is quite a thing, but the North is scooping that up. So I will say, there's a couple people, it feels like there's about 12 sure thing Northern first round picks. Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, Mason Graham, Ashton Genty, Ty Warren, Will Johnson, Colston Loveland, Mike Green from Marshall, who counts as the North in West Virginia, Derek Harmon of Oregon, Gray Zabel of North Dakota State. God bless North Dakota State. We'll take it in the North. Kenneth Grant and Josh Simmons are the 12 that it seems like the mock drafts, when I aggregated in my mind, aggregation of the mind, those guys are mostly there. The swing guys that really, so that's 12. If we're talking that 18-14 is about the projection right now. Donovan Ezeraku of BC, big for the North if he gets in the first round. Josh Connolly of Oregon, big. I don't have Shadur Sanders on the sure thing list because you can find people who have him sliding to the second round now. If he goes in the first round, that's big. And then 3 Ohio State guys. If the Ohio State run...
Did we lose him, Mike?
Did you lose me?
No, we still got him.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Well,
I'm good.
Great.
Okay.
Maybe we lost Will.
I'll just talk. Oh, no. Landis, just nod. Just nod. I'll just say crazy things that I rope you in on. If the Ohio State run starts in the first round instead of the second round, and that's with Emeka Egbuka at receiver, Donovan Jackson on the offensive line, Travion Henderson at running back. A lot of people are like, oh, could the Broncos be interested in Travion Henderson? Maybe he'll get in there. That could be very interesting. So I have 12 sure first round guys, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 possibilities. Now, I looked at a bunch of mock drafts. I looked at Peter Schrager, who just moved from NFL.com to ESPN.com. Peter Schrager is 14-18 north to south. Okay. So, and that is like super, super common. That is kind of the consensus. The SI.com mock draft, 14-18 north to south in its final projection. The Yahoo.com final mock draft, 14-18 in its final projection. And Todd McShay, now at the Ringer, 14-18. So that is the overall, and the mock draft database. So everybody is saying the first round is going to be 18 Southern guys and 14 Northern guys. But we know who the swing guys are. So if Shadur Sanders goes in the first round, Donovan Jackson, Travion Henderson, Josh Connerly, Donovan Ezaraku, like pump your fist. We want a little fist pumping as you watch the draft. We want you to say to your friend, we want you to say to your significant other or your child. We want you to say to your child, we want you to stare your 12-year-old child in the face and say, Donovan Ezaraku just went in the first round. That's great for the North, because that's the kind of energy we want around the draft, Bill, because that's the energy that you get when they talk about it in the SEC. So can we not celebrate this together? Can I get a fist pump for, Emeka Egbuka went in the first round?
You can get a fist pump. Apparently the Northern draft juice is so palpable that it fried my computer. So
yeah.
So yeah, we can definitely embrace it and pump our fists for sure.
That's another great shirt. The Northern draft juice fried my computer. You did a lot of the work on this. So now we're going to talk about like really what is happening. Can we acknowledge this? In conclusion, but we got another 70 minutes to give you on this show. In conclusion, for now, the North has closed the talent gap, both when it comes to on-field results in college football, which is, of course, what matters the most. College football fans do not go to stadiums and say to themselves, man, we are really doing a good job producing millionaires for a multi-billion-dollar industry. Oh, I'm so proud of our school. You want to win games. So this is like, we talk about this for a day. That's not what this is about. But we see it on the field, and we do see it in the draft. The talent gap closed.
Yeah. Definitely on the field, and I think we're starting to see the draft come around to what's happening on the field.
Okay, how did it happen? You looked at the top 100 projected picks on mock draft database, and you looked at both where they went to high school and where they went to college, and you can see a little bit of the trend here and how the North is sort of making this happen. So, Bill, why don't you take us through this?
Yeah, so I guess the thing that was most interesting to me as we were talking about it is that like the input of high school prospects between the North and the South, I think is probably about as stark as it's been. Like I don't think that much has changed because we know where high school prospects tend to come from. So the input of like top 100 high school recruits, was this from the last recruiting class, Doug, that you'd found these numbers? The 2024 class?
Well, this is what you sent. This is what of the top 100. No, this high school thing. This high school thing is the top 100 guys in this draft. Where did they go to high school? Yeah. Got
it. So 61 from the South, 28 from the North, 11 from the border. I don't think anybody would be surprised by that because we know where the good high school football players come from. The output's what's different. Southern College is 52, Northern College is 42. And border, again, not holding up its end of the bargain, at 6. So like the stark difference between the two, where they come from, but then what they are when they get sent out to the NFL, is kind of what was most surprising to me on the surface level. You can dig into it a little more. We have some categories, but those are the numbers: 61 to 28 from the high schools, but 52 to 42 from the colleges between the North and the South.
So I think, like, again, we do some stuff on this show that tries to explain the sport in a way that nobody else does. But I think people understand what we're talking about here. It's double. At the high school level, did you go to high school in Texas or Louisiana or Georgia or Florida, right? 61 South, did you go to high school in Oregon or Washington or Michigan or Ohio or Pennsylvania? 28. So 61-28 in high school, double. But then when you choose your college, 52-42. So the North is already closing the gap there. And again, this is top 100 in the mock draft database. This is about, right, like the first 3 rounds or so. So anyway, that's what we're talking about here. How? So like now we want to look at examples. Okay, talent gap being closed. Fact. How is it happening? Number one, from your research, Bill, you got to keep your Northern 5 stars home. And a guy that really jumped out to us in this discussion is Josh Connolly of Oregon, who is right on the border of being a first-round pick or an early second-round pick. He was a 5-star guy out of Seattle, Washington, who wound up at Oregon. But how did Oregon? And then guess what? He helped Oregon win. Oregon developed him into a high-level NFL prospect, and everybody won. It is the ideal story of what you want to do, because I think one of the number one things that gets lost is the development of 5 stars when people discuss college football, because you get them. It's like, 5-star. Oh, there's not that many of them. They're well, you still got to help them. They still need assistance to maximize their potential. Josh Connolly, but it wasn't a sure thing, Bill, that Oregon was going to get him.
No, so he's from Washington, but he was looking at a lot of Southern programs, and then also looking at USC. I think among his 5 official visits were Oregon, where he ended up going, and Michigan out of the North. But the others were Oklahoma, Miami, and USC. And I'm trying to remember his recruitment. Like it was, I think it was like late developing with a lot of the stuff. People were fairly unsure of where he was going to go, like kind of up until the very end. A lot of, I don't know, competing investments maybe to get Josh Connolly to come to play for their school. And like it would have been great. Like if he would have stayed home and played at Washington, it would have been good. But at least he's stuck in the Pacific Northwest, and more importantly, he's stuck in the North. And Oregon was able to keep him home. And then he was on the ideal sort of 5-star offensive lineman play. Maybe a little differently. Like maybe he played earlier than some other guys do, but was able to leave as a potential first-round pick. And you're right about the fact that 5 stars don't always clearly don't always turn in the first round picks. Like I actually think people might be surprised how often like they don't hit on first round picks. I did a story for The Athletic a couple years ago because I thought it was worth diving into, but like the programs who do the best job of bringing in 5 stars and actually turning them in the first round picks. And it's like, it's not a 90% hit rate just because you're bringing a 5-star prospect. So Oregon kept the guy that was like in its footprint away from Southern programs, developed him into at worst an early second round pick, potentially a first round pick on the offensive line.
And that was like a really good run of Seattle talent there. JT Tuimoloau and Emeka Egbuka, who are both in this draft, are going to be first or second round picks for Ohio State. We're Seattle guys. So this is one of those like, hey, it'd be nice for Washington to maybe keep some of those guys home. But if you're going to lose them, at least lose them to the North. Just like Steve Angela's transferring to Syracuse from Notre Dame. Is like, okay, you're going to lose them to the North. Don't let, like you have, the North to succeed at the highest level of any of this stuff has to be able to go in the South every now and then and win, but you have to put up a fence first. If Alabama and Georgia and Clemson and Texas and LSU are coming north and taking the best guys up here, we're dead.
Yeah, and I think it's one difference in the North, I think, when it comes to high school recruiting is that like where the 5 stars are in the North does tend to shift a little bit. It's like if you're in the South, like you're going to go to Atlanta and find like 11 5-star prospects. That doesn't really exist in the North. Like sometimes they're in Ohio. They're like for this draft, like Jack Sawyer's a 5-star prospect from Ohio. Will Johnson's a 5-star prospect from Michigan. Both those guys stayed home, but like those aren't states that have 5-star guys every year. So like in this window, it just so happened that the Pacific Northwest had 3 guys, and Josh Connolly, JT Tuimoloau, and Emeka Egbuka, who only one of them stayed like quote unquote home in the Pacific Northwest, but at least all 3 of those guys ended up staying north.
All right. Next up is getting the right transfers. And according to your top 100 research from the mock draft database, 10 of the Northern guys in the top 100 are transfers. And Travis Hunter and Shadur Sanders at Colorado lead the way there. But like Derek Harmon, a Michigan State transfer that was a big loss in the spring portal last year for the Spartans, he could have gone a million different places. He was a hugely impactful player at Oregon. I thought at times he was Oregon's best player. And again, ideal world, Michigan State keeps a guy like that, but at least he didn't go to LSU. And so what did you find in the North having to be able to strategically add both big time transfers and maybe some transfers up from the lower level?
Yeah, I would say the first thing that I found was I was surprised the number was only 10. So it was 10 out of the 42 Northern guys in the top 100 compared to 19 out of the 52 for the South in the top 100. I would say maybe both those numbers were slightly lower, but yeah, there's the obvious ones, the Hunters and the Sanders, and there's like, some extenuating circumstances there, certainly with Shadur Sanders following his dad to Colorado. But then there's other high profile transfers, right? There's Quinshon Judkins going from Ole Miss to Ohio State. Derek Harmon was a high profile transfer, but he at least went north to north. As you said, I thought that there were some pretty like shrewd evaluations in here. Jaden Higgins, like at Eastern Kentucky, like incredibly lightly recruited, doesn't have a ranking, goes to Eastern Kentucky, and then Iowa State's like, that's the guy for us, and he becomes a borderline first round kind of talent. Josiah Stewart was at Coastal Carolina, like a good G5 player, but Michigan correctly assumed that production would translate to the power conference level, and he played very well there. He'll probably be like a second round pick as well for the Wolverines. And then another one I thought was Josh Simmons at Ohio State. Like he was not very good at San Diego State the 1 year he started there. The fact when they got him, we were like, I don't know, this doesn't look right. And he blossomed into a guy whose athletic traits are taking him far. Like I don't know that you'd say like Josh Simmons played like a dominant left tackle every snap he was on the field for Ohio State, but clearly what Ohio State saw in the athletic profile is what NFL teams are seeing now, to the point where he might be a first round pick, even though he practically missed this entire season with a knee injury. So like you like when the obvious ones are there, take them, hit on them. Yes. But you need to be pretty good in your evaluations when you're taking the up transfers, like a Higgins or a Stewart or a Simmons.
Yeah. All right. Next one is development, this is always a story for the North. You have to be able to do this. Ashton Jeanty stands out, was a 3-star guy, of course. And what he did at Boise State, what Boise State did in developing him and keeping him around, keeping him out of the portal last year is a remarkable success story. And he continues to rise up draft boards. Feels like he's going to be a 5-star, a top 5 pick, excuse me. But there are also a couple other 3-stars that you really... that just felt emblematic to me of what the North can do at its best. And again, you in your research, I think you found that the South was like 55% of their guys in this top 100 were 4 and 5 stars. The North was 52%. So it's not like the South is only 5-star guys who turn into top 100 draft picks, and the North is a bunch of 3-star guys. But development is development, and the North has to do it.
Yeah, and the North is better, right? Like I think it's not a runaway. I might have assumed it would have been before digging into the data that the North was heavy on guys who were 3 stars or worse off out of high school, and it was 48% of the North's top 100 compared to the 45% of the South, as you laid out there. Jeanty was one. Kenneth Grant, I look, is a big one from Gary, Indiana, 3-star prospect in the 247 Sports Composite. Like I think some places he was a 4-star, but in the composite, these guys were 3 stars. Good piece of recruiting from Michigan to get him and then turn him into just an absolute menace on the defensive line. Donovan Ezeraku was a 3-star prospect from New Jersey that went to Boston College. Ariante Ursary is a big one. He's a 3-star that went to Minnesota, I think from Missouri, if I'm not mistaken. Just like kind of flew under the radar for a couple of years, and then his first year starting was like, oh, this guy looks like he has it. And then came back for another year and was just one of the better tackles in the country. So those are probably the most noteworthy ones: Jeanty, Grant, Ezeraku, and Ursary among the 3-star guys. There were like some other, I guess, like lower end 4-star prospects too, who you could probably lump into this mix. But there's a lot of good development of like not under recruited players, but certainly guys that when they were coming out of high school weren't viewed as players who would be first round picks or even like kind of top 100 draft picks. And the North has a handful of them.
And then the last group is taking some Southern stars in recruiting, but this is definitely 4th of 4 in this category, right? That I feel like sometimes I can get wound up about, like, you got to go down and win some fights. You have to be able to go into Georgia and Louisiana and Texas and Florida as a Northern team and occasionally win a battle for a top 100 national recruit. But it's not as important as this other stuff. Like, there's not a million examples here, right?
No, probably the least bankable of the plans at the very least. Donovan Jackson at Ohio State is one that falls in this category. He's from Texas, but he also had family ties to Ohio, which like Ohio State's always very good about that. I think there's lessons to be learned there for other Northern programs. Like if there's a kid that's outside your footprint, but like maybe his granddad grew up a fan of yours, like try to seek that out and see if he can't find a connection there. Travion Henderson's another one from Virginia who went to Ohio State as a 5-star prospect in the class of 2021. Some others, Ben Morrison from Arizona went to Notre Dame. It seemed like he was only interested in Northern programs, but he is from Arizona and ended up picking Notre Dame. Virginia Tech is a border school, as you mentioned, but like Penn State flipped Taiwan from Virginia Tech. So that's like
huge.
almost, yeah. That's like quasi taking a guy out of the South. And then one other one I wanted to mention, Jalen Royals is a wide receiver for Utah State, was an unranked Georgia high school prospect who went to junior college and like didn't really seem to have anybody sniffing around him as a high school prospect or a JUCO prospect. And Utah State took him and he put up like 2,000 receiving yards over 2 years. And now he's going to be maybe like a 3rd round pick for Utah State. And we'll take him. He counts for the North.
Yeah, Utah State's the North. So it's an uphill battle. Kirby Smart can just look out his window and see a 5-star walking down the street in a way that Matt Campbell or Luke Fickell or Fran Brown or often even Ryan Day and James Franklin and Dan Lanning can't exactly do. So it is an uphill battle. And there have been times when I think you could have been very frustrated with the North, with a lack of aggression, with a lack of strategy. Like, how are you acquiring talent? And I don't feel like that frustration is nearly as prevalent as maybe it was 5 or 10 years ago. And I think we're seeing the results of that.
Yeah, I don't think it is. And I'm be very interested to track this data in the years to come, because it does seem like Oregon's a great example, right? Like going into Texas and getting Decorian Moore. Like, I just don't know that Oregon was equipped to do stuff like that. And Ohio State always is able to kind of go down there and get a guy or two. But like if Michigan and Penn State and Notre Dame obviously is a national recruiting brand, like you could see an uptick in that last category. I don't know that it'll ever be the thing that dominates the North's draft class, but while it may not be a bankable strategy for the majority of our Northern teams, the top crop I think could definitely pull it off and probably should seek to do it.
All right, let's run through a couple other things to keep your eye on from a Northern perspective when you're sitting down with your yellow legal pad to watch this draft. And the first one is, I just want to make sure that we appropriately give the talent on Michigan's national championship team from 2023 the appropriate flowers, because I felt like, yes, last year Michigan had 13 players drafted. That was one of the best draft classes ever. Only 3 schools had ever had more. But I think also some people be like, oh, all in the 7th round. They weren't all in the 7th round. But the point is that after a depth of talent a year ago, this year Michigan is positioned to have 4 first-round picks in tight end Colston Loveland, defensive tackles Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, and cornerback Will Johnson. And they've never had that before. They've had 3 years where they had 3 first-rounders in 1949, 1995, and 2001. But when I looked, Bill, at PFF and our top 30, the most snaps played in Michigan's 2023 national championship season, in the end, there are 18 of those 30 who either were drafted last year or are projected to be drafted this year. There's only 7 who were either undrafted last year or projected to be undrafted this year. 3 of them are still at Michigan for 2025, and 2 other guys transferred or at different schools. Tyler Morris at Indiana, where unfortunately he got hurt, and Keon Sabb at Alabama. So in the end, and by the way, Michigan, with J.J. McCarthy last year and the 4 guys expected this year, are going to wind up with 5 first-rounders among their most important players from a national championship team, 2 second-rounders and 5 third-rounders. So they're going to wind up with 12 guys who are first or second or third-round picks out of their most important players. That's not like the most talented team ever, but it is on the level with what you would expect of a national championship team. So just a reminder to people, if you thought Michigan won only because they were old, or if you thought Michigan won only because Connor Stallions had binoculars, they had very talented players as well. And I thought it was a reminder. And it's just funny that like all their first rounders weren't out of eligibility last year.
Yeah, I think that is a thing that's sort of gotten lost in the Connor Stallions stuff, which like Michigan kind of brought it on itself, so I don't necessarily feel bad for them. But like there was a championship talent level on that team, right? Like this is, as you said, like maybe there have been others like those Miami teams and Ohio State teams maybe have better draft output, but like this is what you would expect of a national championship team. So like it took them a couple of years to build it, and they were older, compared to some other teams, but it's not like they were lacking for pro NFL kind of talent. For like the 4 first rounders in like your down year, like your downturn year after a lot of your roster goes off to the NFL is pretty remarkable.
Let's talk about the defending national champs. Ohio State Almost certainly. I will be very surprised if it doesn't happen. Ohio State's going to tie the record for most draft picks in a single year. It's currently held by Georgia, who had 15 in 2022 off their national championship team. Every projection you can find has 15 Ohio State guys getting drafted. Nobody has 16 Ohio State guys getting drafted, and very few places have 14 Ohio State guys getting drafted. And when you look at the mock draft database very quickly, first round, Josh Simmons, projected second round, Emeka Ibuka, Donovan Jackson, Travion Henderson, Tyleek Williams, JT Tuimoloau, Quinshon Judkins, Jack Sawyer. Certainly a couple of those guys could get into the first round. Third round, quarterback Will Howard. Fourth round, Denzel Burke, Lathan Ransom, Ty Hamilton. Fifth round, Seth McLaughlin, Cody Simon. Sixth round, Jordan Hancock. And then to get to 16 and break the record would require either Josh Fryer at tackle or G. Scott at tight end to get drafted. But Landis, like, tying an all-time record is going to be kind of a big deal.
It will be a huge deal. It was tied previously for the record right before Georgia broke it too. So like it's getting, and I think that, you know, understandably irked Ohio State fans. They were sort of knocked off that perch. So this would be nice for the Buckeyes to get back there. I think it's possible. I wouldn't say it's likely, but I think it's possible that Ohio State like ties the record for most draft picks without having a first round pick. Like I think Josh Simmons will be a first round pick, and definitely like Emeka Ibuka. I've seen Travion Henderson getting some first round buzz. Like if they had 0, I wouldn't be shocked. If they had like 3, I wouldn't be shocked. But the fact that they can maybe have the most with 15 and not have a first round pick is pretty crazy.
Yeah. That would be wild if Ohio State has no first rounders and 8 second rounders.
Which was what would happen. Yeah. Like they're going to have like at least 6 second rounders. It's just a matter of if any of those guys creep into this in the first round.
Because like even by comparison, we're talking about like that Michigan national championship team in the end is almost certainly going to produce 5 first rounders. I don't think this Ohio State national championship team among the top 30 snaps guys is going to produce 5 first rounders, because it'll be Simmons this year, maybe, or maybe one of those other guys. But again, it could be between 1 and 3 first rounders. And then Caleb Downs and Jeremiah Smith, who are not in this draft, are sure first rounders when they come out down the line. But this Ohio State national championship team, among guys who actually played, could end up with 3 or 4 first rounders. But it is the depth. And we knew it watching the Buckeyes. It was not the top end, other than a young guy on each side of the ball who were about as good at their positions as we've seen in recent college football in Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs. But it was the depth of talent. It's like, hey, do you think you could win a national title if you just have like 12 second and third round guys? And the answer is yes. It is definitively yes. You don't have to dominate the first round.
The average draft position, when it's all said and done, of Ohio State's national championship team is going to be like 39.
Right. Yeah. And there's going to be a run, right? There could easily be a run of like 37, 38, 39, 40, all Ohio State guys.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
Prepare yourself for that. So that's day 2. Ohio State should own day 2. It is very interesting to see how many guys get into the first round on Thursday. All right. Iowa State. We loved them. We've talked about them. There are things we talk about on the show that don't come true. This was a thing that we talked about on the show a lot that did come true. Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel were each 1,000-yard receivers in 2023. And we said, man, I think they might be good again. And they were. And they were each 1,000-yard receivers in 2024. And they propelled Iowa State to the best season in program history. Throw in cornerback Darian Porter. On the mock draft database at the moment, Higgins is ranked as the number 49 projected player. Noel is 61 and Porter is 68. That is second round for Higgins and Noel, although I think both of them could go higher than expected, and probably early third round for Porter. Iowa State in its history has never had 3 top 100 draft picks in the same season. So that's what we're talking about here. It means, Iowa State's going to have a lot to make up for, but it's one more acknowledgement, tip of the cap, that there was some rare talent. And by the way, I think Jaden Higgins is going to be a beast in the NFL. And if you told me that Jalen Noel is going to get in there and scoot around and make some plays over the middle and be really good too, I certainly would believe it. Tip of the cap to Iowa State.
You think Higgins can get in the first round, right? I wouldn't bet on it, but maybe possible.
I think he is exactly what you want as an NFL receiver in a lot of ways. I think he is not incredibly far away from Rome Odunze, who was a top 12 pick last year. And so is Jaden Higgins going to go in the 50s or the 40s this year? I think somebody could look at Jaden Higgins at 29 and think to themselves, that guy, I absolutely. I mean, I love him. I think that's possible, but I think also you see a ton of second round receivers go on to be productive immediately.
Definitely.
So I expect Jaden Higgins almost certainly and Jalen Noel very probably to make impacts as rookies.
Yeah, and Porter's interesting too because he's like one of the guys I think whose stock has improved the most over this process. Like I don't know, he wasn't talked about. I think coming out of a season as a guy who'd be maybe like a second or third round pick, but I think he like tested off the charts and has an interesting athletic profile too. So he's a guy NFL teams have fallen in love with, I think.
Let's talk about two teams in Penn State and Notre Dame that aren't going to dominate the draft this year, although you're going to hear two Penn State guys probably in the top 10. But it is a signal of what we should expect from Penn State and Notre Dame in 2025 because they kept some talent around. Penn State should have 5 guys get drafted. Abdul Carter is probably going to be the third pick. I think there's a consensus around that to the Giants. And then Ty Warren, the tight end you mentioned, going to go somewhere between 8 and 12. KJ Winston, who got hurt and didn't play after week 2, is going to be their second highest defensive guy drafted from a very good defense. So again, a reminder, Penn State did everything they did without KJ Winston, who is now number 75 on the mock draft database, got hurt in week 2. That was a huge loss that they overcame. And then Kobe King and Jalen Reed are going to be like 5th or 6th round picks from that defense. But Bill, a reminder, Penn State has a lot back. We know that. The draft is telling us that.
Yeah, if I'm in college football, I'm not thrilled by the fact that 2 teams from the semifinals that recruit very well are going to have small draft classes.
Yeah. Notre Dame should have between 6 and 8 guys drafted, but again, even more than the KJ Winston circumstance for Penn State. The top Notre Dame guy who's going to get picked didn't play after week 6. Ben Morrison, the corner, who they said, hey, is anybody here? Can you? And Leonard Moore, the true freshman, was like, I can do it. And then he did it. But what was Notre Dame missing? Same thing with Will Johnson, Michigan. Hey, well, what happened when Will Johnson got hurt for Michigan? Oh, you mean they played without a guy who's going to be the 14th pick? Ben Morrison's going to get picked in the 40s. He's going to be the first Notre Dame guy off the board. They made the national championship game without their best draft pick.
And so only because of injury stuff. Like he's first round talent. He's just going to be picked in the 40s because he's got hip injury.
So like crazy. If he's just himself, I'm not predicting that Notre Dame would have beaten Ohio State, but nobody guarded Marvin Harrison Jr. better in college than Ben Morrison in the regular season Notre Dame-Ohio State game. Ben Morrison versus Jeremiah Smith would have been a different situation than the way they covered him with Christian Gray when Jeremiah Smith made the catch to clinch the national title game. I'm just saying, it's just Ohio State was the better team, but Notre Dame was playing without its best player since week 6. Riley Mills also he's going to get picked like in the 3rd or 4th round. He got hurt against Indiana and didn't play in the 3 final playoff games. So Xavier Watts is like number 50 on the mock draft database. He's awesome. They're going to miss him. And then they have a lot of guys later. Mitchell Evans, Jack Kaiser, Riley Leonard, Howard Cross, RJ Oben. All good players. They also missed Howard Cross for part of it. They have replacements for almost everybody. It is just a reminder. Notre Dame made the national championship game with some excellent players hurt, and they have a ton back. Just a reminder.
Yeah, and a new, young, interesting, exciting quarterback to go with it.
Notre Dame's going to be good. Quarterback, you let us into it. This is you found this interesting. You said how many quarterbacks? You looked at Dane Bluegrove from The Athletic, longtime friend, puts out a great guide, The Beast at The Athletic. How many the quarterbacks he has projected? How many quarterbacks did you say were? How many quarterbacks were drafted last year in the draft?
I think it was 11. Is that right?
Okay, I think that's right.
Yeah.
So you looked at like the top 11 quarterbacks.
Yeah.
The top 6, there's only one Northern guy, but then the rest of the top 11 quarterbacks are all North.
Yeah, the top 6, there's one. It's Shadur Sanders. The others are Cam Ward, Jackson Dart, Tyler Shuck, who I guess like NFL draft people are like, no college football fan who's watched the sport for 7 years. He's actually good. And Jalen Milroe and Quinn Ewers are the other guys in the top 6. And then the back half of the top 11 was Kyle McCord in order. Kyle McCord, Will Howard, Dylan Gabriel, Riley Leonard, and Curtis Rourke.
So there's some interesting stuff in here. First, 3 of the top 5 Southern guys all spent time in the North. Cam Ward at Washington State. Tyler Shuck started his career at Oregon before he went to Texas Tech and Louisville. And Quinn Ewers, of course, had his 1 year at Ohio State where he was just trying to figure out where the bathrooms were before he went back to Texas. So, like, again, we'll give like
Dart's also
partial
older,
credit.
though. He's from Utah. He went to high school in Utah.
Who is?
Jackson Dart.
Jackson Dart's from Utah? How's he not at BYU or Utah? What's going on there? Oh, now I like Jackson Dart. I've been throwing shade at you. I didn't know he was a son of the North. I've been throwing shade at Jackson Dart for 3 years, not because of Jackson Dart, but because what the SEC honks forced upon us. So, I apologize. Wow. Is there anybody in that group of 5? And it could be 3 quarterbacks could get picked in a row in former Ohio State quarterback, 1 year Ohio State quarterback who won the national championship in Quinn Ewers, Kyle McCord, and Will Howard. But of those 5 Northern guys at the back, Syracuse, Kyle McCord, Ohio State, Will Howard, Oregon, Dylan Gabriel, Notre Dame, Riley Leonard, Indiana, Curtis Work. Is there anybody that catches your eye?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is Howard, because my opinion of him has changed quite dramatically from when Ohio State got him. Because when he went to Ohio State, he said he felt like he would have been like a 5th round pick had he come out last year. I'm not sure he would have been drafted had he come out last year.
Okay.
Based off how last year's draft went. I just don't think there was enough there from the Kansas State production and film for him to be certain that he was going to be a 5th round pick or a draft pick of any regard. And what we saw from him, especially in the playoff, was like pretty eye opening, at least for me. And like I get there's a lot of questions about like, can you do it when you're not playing with the super friends? And he's definitely had a lot of talent around him, but like size, some of the throws he made in the playoff, mobility, he's got like the personality traits that I think NFL teams will really like and leadership capabilities too. So I feel like people feel like Will Howard's going to be like a 3rd or 4th round pick, but I don't know that I'd be shocked if he ended up being a 2nd round pick, because I do think a team might really fall in love with him just because of like the kind of guy that he is.
Okay.
And then you can put on the film and watch what he did in the playoff for Ohio State.
There's guys on this list who might make a pretty good NFL living for a decade holding clipboards. I am intrigued by Riley Leonard. Colin Cowherd last year during the playoffs said, I don't know what you see, but I see Josh Allen, which is just a reminder that sometimes national people who check in on college football for 10 seconds every year should just keep their mouths shut. He's not Josh Allen.
He's definitely not Josh Allen.
Riley Leonard is, I think, a very interesting athlete. And he's like a crazy throw his body around battering ram at times. And this is one of those where you find a unique player, and then everybody that you think might be a little weird, you compare to the one unique player in the world. But like a Taysom Hill kind of thing, I'm not sure that I wouldn't want Riley Leonard on my roster and then have him throw his body around and do some crazy stuff and maybe occasionally come into the game. He could be a heck of a tush push guy or something. I don't know that Riley Leonard, I doubt that Riley Leonard can play quarterback, stand back there, diagnose, hit open receivers, play with anticipation, make all the throws he needs to make.
Right.
But there's probably 4 or 5 plays a game where I wouldn't mind him having the ball in his hands. So I just think he's an interesting athlete, and I'm curious if somebody could get creative with him.
Yeah, I think he's interesting. Like clearly he's got a lot of room to grow as a thrower, but he also he's thrown 1,000 passes. Like that's not a lot for a guy who's in college football.
1,000 passes in the first 5 games of last year.
Yeah, like I don't know. Like, can you functionally learn on the job as an NFL backup? I don't know, but he's quite raw as a passer still. Like I just wonder what more there might be to unlock if he ends up with the right team to do it.
Yeah. So again, as John noted, like kind of a weird quarterback year. Certainly not elite, especially when you think about where
it's a bad quarterback year.
Okay.
You can say it.
We can say it. I mean, you think about where Bo Nix and Michael Penix and guys like that got drafted last year and how they would be if Michael Penix and Bo Nix and JJ McCarthy were in this draft. And last year it was like, well, they're not Jaden Daniels. It's like, yeah, they're not Jaden Daniels, but there's no Jaden Daniels here, right? Show me Jaden Daniels. Nowhere. So, yeah. And who am I? I don't know about Cam Ward. Like, it's fine. Good luck to him. But I'm saying be careful of comparing guys to like a unique singular guy. Like you can read Mahomes comparisons with Cam Ward. And it's like, okay, really? Like for real? That Like, that's where we're going, because he throws off platform every now and then. It's like, please be careful. But I don't know that anybody in this quarterback class is going to be a home run.
I don't. I wouldn't be drafting a quarterback. If I was a quarterback needy team, I think I just punt to next year.
Yeah. So that's where we are. And now we're going to bring in Bradley Locker to explain this story that he did. And then we're also going to do one more drafting, which is, we just want to tell you, like, who in the North's really been getting after it in the draft and who maybe could pick it up a little bit. There is a team, Bill, among our 28 that has not had a first round player since 1994. And that is more than a decade behind everybody in the North. So anyway, we'll get all of that soon, but right away, when we come in after this break, we'll be joined by Bradley Locker talking about his story at Pro Football Focus. Joined now by Bradley Locker, who wrote a very interesting story, Bill, for PFF. Did it not get our attention, Bill? Did it not raise the hairs on the back of our necks?
Not only was it interesting, I feel like you wrote it specifically for KOTN. So I was happy to see it.
You may as well just put a puffed up SEC frauds in the headline, Bradley. And it was, all of it is there in the content, but we were like, we got to talk to this guy. You do some really interesting NFL draft work for PFF, and a story that you had the other day was about recent NFL production. You looked at the schools and who they sent into the NFL, how many snaps those guys played, but then also how productive they were. And did you make a database, or how'd you do that? It's a lot of work, man. How'd you get all those numbers?
No, I mean, first of all, I really appreciate you guys having me on. Very much appreciate it. Big shout out to the whole PFF data team, which does such an incredible job behind the scenes. And it was kind of just, I received a data set and aggregated just kind of the snap count, which it was obviously tracked by PFF. And then kind of the wins above replacement, which is really a signature proprietary PFF statistic that helps kind of measure what you guys talked about, and we can discuss more, but just how productive a player is relative to the average value of somebody in their position in the NFL. And of course, it's huge in sport like baseball, and PFF has tried to introduce that in football. And I think it's a really valuable tool for someone like me and everyone else on the PFF team to help really understand who the best players are in the sport. So it was just kind of a lot of sifting through that data and coming to these conclusions. And I think going into it, I had a good idea that, okay, certain programs are probably toward the top. And I think that's reflected in both the snap count and the WAR, but there were a whole lot of surprises. And it is worth noting, this is just the last 3 years. It's kind of as far back as the data could reliably, I don't know if I can say track, but cogently aggregate without malfunctioning in some way. And it's, of course, a whole lot of data. I feel like there are a lot of really interesting takeaways from it.
I like that. That's a good phrase, Bill. Cogently aggregate. That's I'd name a horse that. So the thing. So okay. So you did snap counts, and then you did like production. But snap counts. Fascinated by this. The top 10 colleges in producing the most NFL snaps among the guys they sent into the league in the last 3 years. Right. So this is young NFL guys. 7 of the top 10 are northern schools. Mike, this is producer Mike. This is an unbelievable graphic. It confirms, I think, for us some of the things that we think we know, Bradley. But we have Georgia number 1, Alabama number 2. No surprise there. Ohio State 3, Penn State 4. No surprise there. Cincinnati 5, LSU 6, Illinois 7, Washington 8, Iowa 9, Notre Dame 10. When we talk about recent guys sent into the NFL, Ohio State, Penn State, Cincinnati, Illinois, Washington, Iowa, Notre Dame. Were you surprised at all when you start crunching these numbers? What did you think? And of course, perhaps you are not couching everything north-south like we do in every aspect of college football on this show. But when you see Illinois and Washington and Cincinnati and Iowa on a list like this, what did you think?
Yeah, just quite honestly, I was very surprised. And I think starting with Cincinnati at number 5, I mean, I think I had an idea that Cincinnati was going to be somewhat high on this list. The Bearcats had been one of the best kind of G5 non-Power 4 schools in the last few years. And bit of a decline since 2021 and 2022. But when you have Sauce Gardner, who has basically been the NFL's best or top 2 or 3 cornerback that comes from your program, it makes sense why the Bearcats would be so high in WAR and snaps. But there are a whole lot of other players too that hail from UCincy, players like Alec Pierce and Josh Wiley, the tight end, and Trey Tucker, and even Desmond Ridder. Of course, he didn't really pan out as the Falcons starting quarterback, but this is kind of a very quarterback-driven metric, PFF WAR, that quarterbacks and wide receivers tend to rank so much higher just inherently. I think the top 29 NFL players from this all year were all from the quarterback position, even guys like Daniel Jones, who really had kind of flame-out seasons. But Cincinnati was the real shocker for me at number 5, and in terms of the productivity too. But I was, really surprised too by Washington, Illinois, Iowa. I think Illinois in particular doesn't really get a lot of headlines for being kind of an upstart NFL breeding ground. But look at what Kirby Joseph did this past year. Devon Witherspoon has been a really strong cornerback for Seattle. Tommy DeVito even getting some starting run with the Giants really helped the Illini. And I think Iowa has kind of always been known around the league and in league circles as one of the better kind of NFL preparatory schools. But you look at what some young Iowa players have done recently. I mean, Jack Campbell, Sam Laporta with the Lions, Riley Moss with the Broncos. The list goes on and on. That's kind of excluding a guy like Lucas Van Ness, who was a first-round pick not long ago.
We were talking about this, Bradley, yesterday when we knew we were going to have you on. And I saw that Cincinnati was 5th in the snaps and 6th in WAR, and thought to myself, well, that's got to be a typo. Like, when you were going through the data, did you think to yourself, well, this can't be right? Like, I have to go back and recheck this. There's no way that Bearcats are top 6 in both of these metrics.
No, it definitely was a shocker. But I kind of did at the end of the day have to trust what we had kind of laid out in front of us. But I think I could kind of get around it. Kind of what I explained, that again, you have Sauce Gardner, who has been one of the NFL's most valuable defenders, and I think the most valuable cornerback in the last 3 years. And then again, Ridder really was not super productive for the Falcons, but by PFF WAR's sake, he did kind of produce enough to the point where it's kind of easy to rationalize Cincinnati being that high.
We do forget how good that was. I guess it was a 2022 draft class for Cincinnati. Like, that was a heck of a class, man. It was like 9 players, and they kind of all sort of panned out. I guess as it was happening, I wasn't thinking to myself like, oh yeah, this will be one of the better draft classes we've had in recent history. And it turns out that they really put it on the field and have produced thus far.
No, exactly right. And I mean, I don't know, besides Gardner, if anybody's really become a true outright star from that Cincinnati team, but it's still a really strong testament. And this is something a program like Cincinnati, which has significantly fewer resources than most other teams on this list, should be very proud of.
So I did like one of those things where you can do a search and find in the article, and I put in the phrase puffed up frauds, and I did not see you use that phrase in particular, but I will read from the article. Tennessee, Kentucky, Florida, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss slot into the top 35 of snaps played by alumni. So this list, we're talking about snaps, but yet all but one are not within the top 30 in PFF WAR generated. So what your research is telling us here, Bradley, is all those mid-tier SEC teams, everybody that's not Georgia, Alabama, and LSU, they send guys to the league because the league's like, well, they're in the SEC, they must be good. But in the last 3 years, when they got there, they didn't do anything. Do you realize the service that you are doing for America with research like this?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was a really fascinating find for me. And I think, I mean, yes, a lot of these SEC programs do get a lot of prestige and respect around the country. And many of them have been among the top teams in terms of getting to the college football playoff and getting to high profile bowl games. But it is a really important, I think, designation that, yeah, these teams can produce NFL players, but these players are not exactly performing the way you would expect once they get to the league. And I think some notable examples that I can personally think of regarding Ole Miss in particular, a guy like Matt Corral had a lot of buzz coming out and then was drafted by the Panthers. Essentially, really almost never played for Carolina and had a bad foot injury, but he was part of the 2022 quarterback class, and there was some first-round buzz around him, and he was just a massive flame out for a program like Ole Miss. And then Tennessee, too, I think I wrote about the offensive system in Tennessee, and that's part of the reason why a guy like Nico Iamaleava left, because of that system, and kind of can help explain why maybe a receiver like Jalen Hyatt, who won the Biletnikoff, kind of fell in the draft a little bit, but really has been very unproductive for the Giants thus far, probably about the team's wide receiver 4 or 5 at this point. That's potentially with the Giants adding another wide receiver in the draft. So I think when you actually kind of break it down schematically, structurally, it does lead to some questions about again, how NFL ready are these prospects, and how much are their systems, for example, very RPO play action heavy at Ole Miss, Tennessee really kind of walkie spacing, and then defensive line rotation. We see these questions pop up year over year, and it's happening with prospects too, like James Pierce right now and Jackson Dart at Ole Miss. So it's kind of lingering around these programs, and I think this data should be eye-opening.
I feel so good. God, I feel so good. I'm on a cloud right now, Bradley. Thank you.
Bradley, do you think, like you sort of alluded to it there, but do you think this information can become instructive for NFL teams when they try to, figure out which programs they want to pick from? I'm looking at the WAR data. 13 of the 20 are of the North. Like Iowa State's in the top. Iowa State's second. I realize like quarterback drives a lot of that. So Iowa State's second with Brock Purdy. Washington's fourth, Cincinnati sixth, Pitt's ninth, Oregon's 10th. Like the northern programs are really showing up here. And I think it makes sense, right? Like you look at recruiting data, of course, like the SEC gets a lot of really good players coming out of high school, but at least according to what you put out there, like maybe that's not always turning into super high level NFL draft production. Do you foresee any kind of shift in the way that NFL teams might go about their business, given some of the data that you unearthed in this story?
It is a really compelling kind of point and counterpoint to how people often think about the draft. And I think the way I interpret it is that it's just another data point that the team should consider that, okay, well, we're debating between two prospects and they're graded pretty similarly over the last 3 years, or even historically, players from X school have done better than Y. But I think as this year's draft will indicate, there are plenty of elite players that are coming from programs that are really nowhere to be found on this list. Miami, Florida did not rank super highly. That should change with Cam Ward. Something like Boise State, which obviously made the college football playoff this past year. I feel like teams aren't going to say, oh, well, Boise State didn't rank in the top 50. We can't take Ashton Genty. Same with Arizona, Ted McMillan, Colorado, Travis Hunter, Shedeur Sanders. So I think this list could look really different in the next 3 or so years, just with the influx of those types of players. But people in scouting often say kind of don't scout the helmet, scout the player. It's the same reason why people believed in C.J. Stroud out of Ohio State, even though a lot of the recent Ohio State quarterbacks had really underwhelmed in the pros. So I think it's just another metric or data point that teams should factor into their evaluation that, okay, maybe as you talked about, a team like Iowa State has turned out some solid NFL pros. Just going through the list of WAR to see some other teams that, yeah, maybe if we want to take somebody productive from a sleeper school, a team like Washington or USC. I'm not sure USC is going to really sleep on anybody, but yeah, in Illinois, or even in North Carolina, that, yeah, these schools can be kind of good preparatory options for NFL players, but it all boils down to so much more than that.
So Bradley, you've been crunching some numbers on the draft. Is there a guy in the North, and we told you what the North is, 28 Power 4 Northern teams. If you say Jackson Dart, you're getting kicked off this show so fast your head's going to spin. Is there like a Northern guy that you're just like, hey, I really like this guy. Maybe I like him more than the consensus?
Yeah, I think for me, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but Oregon counts in those lists of schools, right? Perfect.
Sure does.
So yeah, I do really like the Oregon running back Jordan James, and his consensus has been a little bit all over the map. I'm expecting him to go on day 3. I know we at PFF on our PFF big board do not rank him very highly. I think he's running back 14 or 15, and he's projected around 6th or 7th round by our fabulous expert, Trevor Sickma. But I was a much bigger fan of James when I watched him. I feel like you could really see his elusiveness in the hole, just kind of the way he accelerates through the lane and how he finishes every run. I believe he posted a 90-plus PFF rushing grade. He was tied for top 10, I want to say, in yards or in carries of 10 or more yards. And I feel like, again, it's an extraordinarily deep running back class, but I feel like every time I watch a Ducks tape, which is pretty extensive, given how good they were this past year and how many players or opponents they had that are going to be drafted, that James is making some type of standout play or doing something impressive. So I actually had a late round 2 grade on him, and I know he didn't maybe have the best combine, but he is definitely a running back that I'm interested in and would take higher than most.
I want to ask you, Bradley, about this like sort of cluster of Northern quarterbacks. Obviously, Shedeur Sanders is going to go high, probably go in the first round, but Kyle McCord at Syracuse, Will Howard at Ohio State, and then I think maybe there's a gap after that, but then Dylan Gabriel at Oregon, Riley Leonard at Notre Dame, and Curtis Rourke at Indiana. Of that group, from sort of what you've crunched in this pre-draft process and what you've been able to synthesize, who do you think emerges from that cluster as like the guy that people like the most, or do you have a guy among that group that you like the most?
Sure. I guess the guy that people like the most among that group my guess would probably be McCord, but I guess there's a chance that Howard could go higher than expected coming off the national championship, graded out much more strongly in PFF passing grade throughout the college football playoff. And I feel like teams understand that he was a high-level player at Kansas State before. I had more of kind of a fourth-round grade on him. Thought he played in a really beneficial system that freed open a lot of receivers. But there's a real chance that maybe a team like the Raiders sitting in the third round with Chip Kelly, now the offense coordinator in Las Vegas, maybe falls in love with taking a quarterback, and the Raiders are probably going to go quarterback pretty high. I think I was kind of a fan of McCord, probably higher than consensus too. I think I had about a third-round grade on him. Of course, you have a lot of questions about the athleticism and maybe the arm strength to a certain extent, and he did play in I think he actually led the FBS in most attempts with an RPO this past year. I think he and Dart were pretty much neck and neck, which is alarming for an evaluation standpoint because an RPO is not really difficult for a quarterback to read out very often. But I think with McCord, there are certain traits that you can bank on. I think his accuracy can be fabulous at times, instances of elite ball placement that allows his receiver to make the best play on the ball. He's anticipatory. He can be decisive. And that kind of hails back to the RPO notion of what he does. But again, I don't know that McCord could ever be a high-level starting quarterback in the NFL. We kind of said that about Brock Purdy, though. I think there are some shades of Brock Purdy in McCord, and to me, he's worth a gamble in the third round as a serviceable backup, maybe who could become a decent NFL starter. But I actually did like Gabriel, too. Of course, the size is definitely a concern for Gabriel, the arm strength as well. You kind of see the ball fade a little bit when he throws some deep passes down the sideline. But I think he has some attributes that NFL teams could like, and it's not even just the experience with the intangibles. I think he's really slippery against pressure, and sack avoidance has kind of been correlated almost as much as just a good passing game has with EPA per play in terms of winning games. And I think Gabriel does that really well. I think also he's really strong at throwing on the run. And there are moments, too, of, again, just elite accuracy with Gabriel. I think he's a nice scrambler as well. So, again, to me, those guys are about third-round caliber quarterbacks. They'll probably go lower than that based on what the NFL values in terms of size, arm and strength, athleticism. But I think those guys could have nice careers.
Sack avoidance not great for Shadur, right? That's probably not a good stat for him.
He embraces sacks. Yeah.
sack embracing. Bradley Locker, thank you for taking time out of your day to join us here on Kings of the North. If the good folks want to follow you and keep up with what you're doing, how can they do that?
Yeah, you can follow all of our amazing work at pff.com. Have, I think, a record number of articles coming out this week, pretty much everything you could want covered on the draft, best and worst case scenarios for every team. Team-specific NFL big boards, which Trevor put together, which is just an amazing feat and just reflects how much he knows and follows about the draft. Last mock drafts coming out, really everything, all bases covered as an NFL fan, and then live analysis during the draft. And then personally, you can follow me on Twitter at Bradley_Locker.
All right. Bradley Locker, thank you for your time. Hopefully we didn't get you in trouble with any SEC folks. We're just kidding around here. We're not kidding, but we're kidding when it comes to like getting you in trouble. Thank you for your time here on KOTN. No, thanks so much for having me, guys. It was a really, really interesting conversation. Man, just you bring in a kid and you ask him to bust some myths, and he just like shreds people. It's great.
I'm just happy for him that he didn't say he likes Jackson Dart.
Yeah, no, we don't want anyone to go down that road. Best of luck to Son of the North Jackson Dart in the NFL draft. Okay, so did we sufficiently bust myths on this show so far?
I think so. I think we've presented some fairly compelling data. Yeah.
Okay. So that is just throw some numbers at people. This is just for your knowledge and information as a fan of Northern football as you prepare for this NFL draft. I looked at the last decade, most first-round picks in the North. It is just a reminder that Ohio State is a machine. 22 first-round picks in the last decade for Ohio State. They have had a first-round pick in 9 straight drafts. That's the second longest streak in the country behind Alabama at 16. Ohio State also has the most first-round picks all time in the NFL draft with 91. That's ahead of USC at 86. And I don't think USC is going to have another first-round pick until they get rid of Bambi. So Ohio State is just going to extend that lead. Very interesting number 2 team here. I don't know if we would have said, Bill, hey, who do you think is number 2 of our 28 Northern teams for producing the most first-round picks in the last decade? I'm not sure anybody would have said Washington. Washington 11, Michigan 10, Oregon 8, Iowa and Notre Dame 7, Penn State 6. And then, by the way, a shout out to the group of 3, which again, these are some programs who are doing it better than others. Northwestern, Boston College, Maryland, Utah, Wisconsin all have 3. Northwestern, Boston College, Maryland are like tied in the top 10. And there are blue bloods who don't have any first round picks in the last decade. We'll get to that in a second. What do you make of Washington here?
Yeah, I wouldn't have assumed it. I know that they're coming off of a very good draft. But I was surprised by that number. They play good ball, man. It's like Chris Peterson had a good program, right? Washington fell off for a couple of years after Chris Peterson left. So I guess it shouldn't be surprising, but yeah, I would have guessed Michigan was number 2, not Washington.
So here's the thing that I think is a good reminder for all of us. And Washington is one of the teams that has not yet had a spring game. We have a couple people having spring games this Saturday. Penn State, Nebraska's doing whatever it's doing on Saturday, but Washington's not going until May 2nd. You can look at Washington and say, well, they did this in this era, and then, well, they did this in this era, and then, well, they did this in this era. And then you come to the conclusion, Washington's had a lot of eras. They're good a lot. So it's like, oh, Don James, well, he just did that for a long time. Okay, they have like a historical coach who played at an incredibly high level. Okay, so they could do it then. Then they brought in Chris Peterson. What was Chris Peterson? A really successful coach who continued his success at Washington. He had him in the playoff. He had him producing NFL draft guys. And then guess what? Kalen DeBoer took him to the national championship game. And Kalen DeBoer is good. I don't think Kalen DeBoer is irreplicable. So you caught lightning in the bottle a little bit with those 3 receivers, Jalen Polk and Jalen McMillan. Of course, Roma Odunze is a first-round pick and finding Michael Penix. But if Kalen DeBoer could do it, I'm not so sure that Jed Fish can't do it. And so it is a reminder to me. It's like, how did Washington do this? Well, the way Washington did this is that Washington sort of is set up to do this and has done it with multiple head coaches.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it should shift perception if there are any Washington fans watching this or listening to this. It's like, yeah, we're good. Do we have to remind you that we're good? This team was in the national championship game 2 years ago. They've produced the second most first-round picks in the North in the last decade. And I don't know that the average college football fan thinks of them that way at all. I think they might think of the national championship game as a one-off, but they also made the playoff in the 14 playoff. This is not a one-off program, and this is the kind of thing that when I look at Jonah Coleman and I look at Denzel Boston, my guy, when I look at Damon Williams, when I look at them rebuilding the offensive line, it gets me reignited for, hey, guess what? Washington is a good football program. Watch out.
Yeah, I think it would be one thing if what Kalen DeBoer did in his short time there felt like it was outside the normal bounds of what Washington has been. But to your point, it hasn't been. I think there are things sort of intrinsic about Washington too. Like they're always going to have, I think, a pretty strong Polynesian pipeline, which is to say they're going to have pretty good linemen, right? So if Jed Fish can continue the receiver quarterback thing there and maybe even strengthen some other positions, like I don't think Washington's going anywhere. Like I was worried that Jed Fish might leave right after a short time, but I don't think that's going to happen either. So I think he's a good coach. I think it's a program with a lot of good going for it. And probably one that, we tend to undervalue. And not you and I, but college football tends to undervalue.
The other team I want to talk about, we touched on it with Bradley, is Iowa. This is one of those where my frustration with the Brian Ferentz era at Iowa sprang partly from the realization and the acknowledgement of how good Iowa is. And that when they were doing that and throwing away one side of the ball on a nepotistic hire at OC, you are throwing away a winning program with real talent. And that was what was so frustrating. If Iowa wasn't as good, it's like, I don't know. They're not going to be that good anyway. Who cares if their OC stinks because he's the coach's son? But that's not who Iowa really has ever been under Kirk Ferentz, and really was never that way under Hayden Fry. They always overachieve in a certain way. They have a standard. And when you see a list like this, guess what? They produce talent. They produce talent on defense. They produce talent on the offensive line. They produce talent at tight end. And this, again, is a reminder. They've struggled to get quarterback figured out. If Mark Gronowski is a real answer here, This again is taking us down the Curtis Rourke at Indiana, like instant solve at quarterback, Michael Penix at Washington. There is a depth of talent and a standard at Iowa. That Mark Kronowski, the transfer, is hurt in the spring, but will be ready for the fall. If he's a real answer there, watch out.
Yeah, well, Gronowski, maybe not now with the injury that he's dealing with, but like was talked about coming into last year as a guy who was going to get drafted now, right? So if he ends up getting drafted, and I guess Iowa has had a couple quarterbacks drafted, right? But we're talking like higher level. Yeah, it's the same. Like it's like Ohio State, right? With its 22, spreads that out over a number of positions. You want to become a program that doesn't. I mean, it's fine to be a program that I guess like specializes in turning out first round talent at a specific position. But if teams like an Iowa or like a Notre Dame, which I would imagine is pretty offensive line heavy among that 7, spreads it out to other positions, that's when you start to see programs transform.
So in the last decade, 15 of our 28 programs have multiple first-round picks. Again, Ohio State 22, Washington 11, Michigan 10, Oregon 8, Iowa 7, Notre Dame 7, Penn State 6, Northwestern, Boston College, Maryland, Utah, Wisconsin 3, West Virginia, Pitt, Michigan State 2. And also shout out North Dakota State has 2, and they're going to get a 3rd. So they're not one of our 28, but talent is talent in the North, and we acknowledge it. 7 of our Northern programs have 1 first-round pick in the last decade. Illinois, Iowa State, Kansas State, Cincinnati, Purdue, BYU, and Minnesota. That means there are 6 schools that have none, which is not great. These are the longest first-round droughts. I thought this was very good for the North. 19 of our 28 teams have a first-round pick in the last 5 years. So that's like recent accomplishment. Here are the teams that don't. Wisconsin hasn't had a first-round pick since 2017. Michigan State and West Virginia since 2016. And now these are the teams with 0 first-round picks in the last decade. Syracuse hasn't had one since 2013. Nebraska and Colorado since 2011. Colorado's obviously going to change that very quickly with pick number 2 in this draft. Rutgers since 2010. Kansas since 2008, and Indiana since 1994, which is crazy. They've had 6 or 7 second-round picks since then, including a guy who was the first pick in the second round. But the fact remains, this is like the other thing for Kirk Cignetti already got Indiana in the playoff. He's got to get him a first-round pick. The 2 things that stand out to me here, these long droughts in the North. This Indiana thing is nuts. Do you think Cignetti will solve this? When will Indiana have its next first-round pick?
Next year with Elijah Surratt.
Okay. Because this is part of it, too, is like you get CJ West came in from the MAC where he was a very good player. CJ West as a defensive tackle is like a top 50 draft prospect in this draft. He's not going to be a first-rounder, but this does not require Indiana to go out and dig out a guy in recruiting and develop him for 5 years. Go get a good player in the portal. Boost him, bang. So you're picking Elijah Surratt. I love when you call your shot like that, man. I love it when you call your shot.
He'll probably end up being a 3rd-round pick, but I'll call Elijah Surratt. Yeah.
Here's the other one. What is happening that Nebraska is on this list? Matt Rule should look at this list and put his head in his hands. Maryland, Northwestern, and Boston College have 3 first-round picks in the last decade, and Nebraska hasn't had a first-round pick since 2011.
Crazy.
It's mind-blowing. This is a problem. Like, this is one of those, again, we're like, okay, remember how Nebraska didn't make a bowl forever? This is tied to this because they haven't had any good players. That's a problem.
Is that a prerequisite?
What's really been holding Nebraska back, would you say? I would say a lack of good players, and it doesn't mean they have no good players, but this is honestly unbelievable.
This was, like I said, this was the one to me that was far wilder than Indiana. Like, I mean, Indiana not having one since 94 is pretty crazy. That's just a long time. But I don't think anyone expects that of Indiana either.
Yeah.
How has this happened at Nebraska? It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So that's where we are. Colorado is obviously going to change this. I don't think there's anybody else. McCord's not going to be a first-round pick. Wyatt Milam from West Virginia is a very good offensive lineman. He's not going to be a first-round pick. There's nobody else that's going to change this drought this year besides Colorado. So good luck.
Nebraska hasn't had a top 50 pick since 2011?
I mean, I don't know.
They've had some mid-second rounders, but the highest was 51, Cam Jurgens.
What are Mike Riley and Scott Frost doing? This is such an indictment. So anyway, all right, that's it. Ball's over. Enjoy the draft Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We'll have a bunch of stuff coming next week. We are back on the Monday, Wednesday rotation here on Kings of the North. But for right now, we will take a break and come back with what you're watching, what you eating, what you thinking on KOTN. Doug Lesmerises, Bill Landis. Like, subscribe, tell a friend, send a question or comment to askkotn@gmail.com. That's askkotn@gmail.com. Bill Landis, what you been watching?
I don't know that I have a good watching. I did sort of on your recommendation, I guess. I started to watch the Bosch series, but I've only watched one episode so far, so I don't really have a ton of thoughts on that. I have been trying to read more, like
what you're reading.
Read more books. Read more books, to be more specific. I don't want to I don't want to be like, I just recently picked up reading. Like, I read a lot of articles. I just don't read very many books. But I'm actually like a pretty good run of doing it now. I've read like in the last, for me, this is very good. In the last like 2 months, I've read 2 and I'm like halfway through a third. And the one that I'm halfway through is like a what if a rom-com was a book? But I just want to say, like, not every book that a man reads has to be about war or sports, right? So I'm reading this book here. It's called Book Lovers. It's by Emily Henry, and it's great. It's delightful. It's fast. It's not the book I read before this was like heavy and sad. It was good. It was a Nickel Boys. It was good, but it was sad.
Nickel Boys. Yeah, they made that into a movie.
Yeah.
Just watched the movie, but yeah.
So I wanted something like that was like lighter and didn't make me feel terrible. So I asked my wife, and she said, you should read this. And I'm reading it about halfway through. And it's just like every romantic comedy trope you could ever imagine is in this book. But it's well written, and it's funny, and I like the characters. And it's okay. I just want to say that it's okay for a man to be comfortable enough with himself to read a romantic novel every now and then if he wants to.
You are changing lives out here today, Bill Landis. Bill Landis said, I can read this book. Book lovers. Do they love books, or are they reading books and they're lovers?
Well, I haven't finished it yet.
Oh.
But they work in the book industry. One's an editor and one's an agent.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me ask. Most of your reading, A, on the John, B, pre-bedtime routine, C, somehow squeezing it in intermittently during the rest of your day?
Combo of on the John and before bed. But and I've tried to get into more of a pre-bedtime routine rather than like watching television, because I guess like watching TV before you go to bed is like not good for you.
Oh yeah.
nor is staring at your phone. So I've been trying to do that. But I'll squeeze it in every now and then too. Like we had 10 minutes between me finishing my show prep and when the show started, and I read a chapter of the book. So like I'll do that every now and then. Yeah.
I think having a good John plan is a very important part of adult life. Mine is not in great shape at the moment because I usually just have random books scattered in there, like John books, right? That little short story books or stuff like that. But I never have an actual full book in the crapper. And I really think I need to get on that. You would recommend it?
I would recommend it. Yeah, it's a great way to pass the time. Yeah.
Okay. I'll get on that. I will report back next week.
All right.
I watched a movie called The Ballad of Wallace Island, and I have to be very careful about the person I am becoming. It was a lovely little story about some rich British guy on an island inviting a folk singer to come sing a one-person concert to him. But my God, if that's who I am, just take me out in the backyard and end it for me. Like I have to go see Sinners this weekend and let like a little bit of action. And I think there's zombies and Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan. Like I cannot only be the Wallace Island guy, because the Wallace Island guy, it's an indie movie. I don't think anybody's seen it.
I've never heard of
81.
this.
That's for 81-year-olds. and they're singing folk songs and eating British breakfast and saying, "Oh, it's a lovely day." Doug, like, be careful. I'm not a Marvel movie guy, but I cannot give up on participating in pop culture entirely. So I have to go see Sinners this weekend because I am the Ballad of Wallace Island guy, but I still think I'm also the Sinners guy. And I hope I can meld those two together. But if you see me just peeling off and becoming only the Ballad of Wallace Island guy, please save me.
I've never heard of this film. I like when a movie only has 5 people listed on the cast list. But Carrie Mulligan's in it. People
She is in it.
Yeah.
She's moderately famous. I don't think she's as famous as Michael B. Jordan, but she's moderately famous. So like it was, and you know what? It's not a problem, but you know what the thing was about the Ballad of Wallace Island? Very much enjoyed it. Lovely little movie.
Is this available for streaming, or did you go to like an art house to watch it?
No. I mean, I need to sit in the dark and eat popcorn. So it was at a normal theater. But we were maybe going to see Drop, right? The movie that you go on the date and you fall out of a building. I've seen the trailer for Drop 400 times, but I didn't go see that. The Amateur, Rami Malek's running around avenging his wife. Like, probably should see that. Didn't see that. We were like, let's go to this. I think there may be someone plays a flute in this movie. Let's go watch that. So Doug, just please, you've got to balance your pop culture consumption. So that's all I'm reminding myself of.
That's good. That's good. I want to see Sinners as well. I might go see it this weekend.
Yeah,
Friday,
I think I might go see it this weekend. Yeah. Around the draft. What are you eating?
I would just like to sing the praises of the Cuban sandwich. I don't think it gets enough credit for its place in the sandwich hierarchy. I had one for dinner the other night, late night. I was home with the 2-year-old, and my wife was out at her book club, and she was nice enough to bring me home some dinner from that. And I requested the Cuban sandwich from a restaurant I'd never had it from before. I've had some bad ones. Like, there are places that'll put a Cuban sandwich on a menu, like a bar that's like not a Cuban restaurant. But if you can find a Cuban restaurant that will make you a nice, authentic Cuban sandwich, it really hits. And the Cuban bread doesn't get enough love either. It's like I don't know. I guess it's like a thinner, kind of a less crispy baguette. But it's a great vessel for a sandwich. So just had a really good Cubano for dinner the other night, and was reminded just how good it can be when people do it right.
You might have to go to Miami. I
have been to Miami. So I went when Ohio State played Alabama in a title game in 2020 in Miami. We went to Little Havana for like half a day, and I had a Cuban sandwich at a restaurant there. That was like, that's the best one I've had.
Okay.
But I've had, this one was up there. This one was pretty good. You got it in Ohio too. Like, who would have thought it?
And again, just to be clear, not named after Mark Cuban.
No, I don't think so. Yeah,
he did not invent it. It's not a Shark Tank invention.
Not how he got rich. No, he didn't get rich from inventing a sandwich.
Okay,
I will someday, but he didn't.
For real, that's the only acceptable way I would ever understand you leaving this show. If you said, I invented a sandwich that people love, I'm out. Short of that, I'm running you through with a sword if you try to leave. So you have a sandwich exit strategy only. Right. My eating is what I'm drinking, but actually it's what I'm crunching while I'm drinking. And I just want to say, do you not at times when you are getting a fountain soda at a convenience store, when any place has the good little ice, don't you fist pump?
Yeah. Like the I'm trying to
Tiny
think.
ice.
Yes.
K usually has it.
Yes.
Tiny ice.
Like Raising Cane's has it.
Yes. Tiny ice. I don't know if it costs more money. I don't know if it's special technology that is required to create tiny ice, but I can't believe that every restaurant and convenience store doesn't have tiny ice. Because if you hit a new convenience store and you put that cup in and the ice comes out and it's normal ice, you sag. Yep. And I don't think there's a single person in the world who is anti-tiny ice. It is a universally accepted, wonderful part of being a human being. And I don't know if everybody did it, would I get tired of it? I think no, because I'm not sure that anybody could be like, oh, no, I like the big ice. You got big ice at home. Tiny ice, great perk to your day.
You can get a so pebble ice,
Pebble
or
ice.
nugget
Yeah.
ice. You can get a nugget ice maker for your home for only $400.
Oh. So, okay, this is the technology. The technology is too expensive for. So Seekin here is saying crushed ice. Yeah, I mean, crushed ice might be the actual, but I like tiny ice. I think tiny ice is like is a little more mysterious.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, how do they make it so tiny? And now we're back to the baby carrot discussion.
Yeah, they take a big ice cube and they whittle it down to one small ice cube. They waste 85% of one normal size ice cube to create one tiny ice cube.
There's little elves inside the ice stand just whittling down the ice for us. All right, what are you thinking about?
I don't have a whole lot for thinking. I was just happy to see like they announced like they're changing the kickoff time for the Rose Bowl. They moved it up an hour from 5 o'clock to 4 o'clock Eastern time, which now means that third quarterfinal game that's after the Rose Bowl won't start at 9 o'clock at night Eastern time, which I'm thankful for because it was ridiculous that game was starting as late as it was. Yeah,
because that's the Ohio State Georgia. That was in the Sugar Bowl, right? The Ohio State Georgia semifinal. That was that. No,
that
game.
Was the Peach. That was the
Peach. Okay, well, that wasn't it. Anyway, we can't keep putting sporting events on at 1 o'clock in the morning. It's not good for anybody. Yeah. So I don't know what they did. I don't know if they badgered the Rose Bowl into it. Did they bribe them? I don't know what the answer is, but I'm glad they did it. So
yeah, I'm glad to. And you'll still get the sunset. It'll be later. It'll be in the fourth quarter instead of the third quarter.
Yeah. And again, to my knowledge, and I can't confirm this for sure, I'm not a scientist, I think the sun is everywhere. So if you maybe missed the sunset at the Rose Bowl, I don't know, maybe look out your window the next day and see if the sun is disappearing from the sky. I don't think it's exclusive to Pasadena, California. The sun is everywhere? I don't know. I'll look it up. I'll check Wikipedia. Is the sun everywhere? Are nuts wood? Things that I search on Google. That's a throwback. This is my last one. So this is when I watch TV shows and movies, I look for this and I have such respect for it. And I also drive my wife nuts with this. But when an actor has a very clean neck shave, when you get a shot from behind, and I know that this show has not aged tremendously for everybody. We still have Friends on in the background of our house a lot. I know our good friend Ari Wasserman is like, I don't understand that show at all. And I get it. It's old. But if you check out Matt LeBlanc and the late Matthew Perry and David Schwimmer, the tight shave on the back of their necks, how clean their necks are. There are times like I've watched this show 38 times. I know what every line is going to be, but I just want to check out some necks. I make my wife shave my neck constantly because I'll get a little bit of a side view of like, it's creeping. Here it comes. It's coming around the corner and I can't stand for this. And I happen to have someone in my previous life, not my previous life, but once upon a time, I knew somebody who just had an unbelievably hairy neck. And he was a very nice person, but it affected my view of him. And so it is hard to shave yourself. It is more helpful if you have a person in your house that you can force to shave your neck. But I also think sometimes it's worth it if in between haircuts, you just go to the barber or go to the hair salon and get them to shave your neck. And I think people do that. It is just on my mind too much. And whenever I see my hair creeping, I freak out.
It's funny you mentioned that because I was just thinking that this morning that I need to get that done. I'm considering, I understand what my hairline is, but I'm considering letting my hair grow out. Because I just like have kind of kept it really, really tight for a while. But so I haven't gotten it. Like by now I would have gotten a haircut and I haven't gotten one. But like I was like feeling the back of my neck this morning. I was like, oh, I got to get this taken care of. Yeah. So I might go to the barber to like get that and like my beard taken care of.
Do you at times attempt to force your wife to shave your neck or no?
Oh yeah, she's done it. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I should have put it in. Definitely done it. I should have put it in the vows. If I could go back. If we ever renew our vows, which I don't know if my wife would go for that, she'd be like, I'll hang on for this, but I'm not doing it again. I would put that in. I don't know that, like, I will force you. I will honor and cherish you and force you to shave my neck at least once a week. Just a way to live, you know?
It's part of the marriage contract. What's the big deal? Yeah.
What's the big deal? All right. That's it for this Kings of the North. Watch the draft. Or no, I don't mean that. If you are watching the draft, make note of North versus South on the border. You guys have the laminated card on your person that tells you what's a North team, what's a South team. Again, like some of these, if it's not a Power 4 conference, like Marshall, that's in the state of West Virginia, we take Marshall, North Dakota State, Utah State, Washington State. Of course, we take all those teams. If you have a question about that, feel to reach out to askkotn@gmail.com. Hey, is this school, they just got somebody drafted. Are they North, South, or border? We certainly will answer that question for you. Thanks as always to our producer, Mike Stowski, for making us look good and sound good. And really thanks to you guys for being here and making all of this possible. Enjoy the draft. Have a great weekend. We will see you Monday. For now, he's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises. And that was Kings of the North.